Welcome. We are glad you are with us for a new edition of Longevity Deal Talk. I'm Fred Fishkin along with Mary Furlong. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Fred. We have a really important podcast in store for everyone just ahead of our Washington Innovation Summit coming up very soon.
Very soon indeed, December 9th and 10th at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. There's an amazing agenda focused on the longevity ecosystem and is a chance to hear from so many great companies and people to meet and perhaps collaborate. We'll have more about it, but the site for more information is WashingtonInnovationSummit.com. And on the subject of longevity, we have our featured guest today, joining us from the International Longevity Center in the UK, CEO David Sinclair. Hi, David.
Hi, lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. And also with us is Eric Killstrom, Aging 2.0 Ambassador for the UK. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Fred. Thanks. And, with my background in scenarios and looking at the future of aging, I think this is an important report. So thanks for including me.
And Fred, you should know whenever I look at something from the UK, I always start with Eric. And we've been collaborating for many years. So he brought this report to our attention. And David, we're so happy to have you on the podcast with us. You spent decades working in policy and research on aging. Give our audience more background on the work you do and the team there at the International Longevity Center.
So what drives us here in the UK is a desire to create a society where all of us, young and old, live healthier, happier and more fulfilling long lives. And how do we do that? We combine evidence with solutions and networks with very strong convening power to try and make change happen. So we work with governments, policymakers, businesses, and employers to try and develop solutions. As an example, we've developed a global healthy aging and prevention index that helps us to understand the age preparedness of different countries across the world, and we're using that to engage with policymakers and businesses and other stakeholders to really try and drive change, because change is needed.
And now you're out with an important new report titled The Future of Aging in an Uncertain World. Let's talk about the more surprising or interesting findings and insights from that report.
So we've long been interested in the future, and without a doubt, climate change, demographic change, and AI is going to transform the way we live our long lives over the next decade. Pretty much all of us are online now, so service providers, innovators need to stop patronizing older people and start delivering usable innovations that help us live this healthier and happier long lives. In some ways, I think our obsession with youth means we're missing the opportunities to drive innovation for long lives. Too many people in and around different bits of industries assume that as we age, we become technologically illiterate, and we need to call out this ageism. So at the heart of the report is that we can make better use of technologies to design products for our long lives. Sorry, did you? And actually, I think what we do highlight in summary is not only is technology going to change the way we live our long lives, but our experience of aging is going to change. So, and this is not some stats from the UK, but you will see similar trends all over the world. In the UK, the number of people aged 65 and over living alone will increase astonishingly. It will increase by 40% over the next 15 or so years. Fewer of us are going to have children to support us. We've seen almost a 70% increase in the number of people aged over 65 who are adult children. We see mental health as an increasing concern for older adults in England. A third of women report having symptoms of depression. We're drinking too much. Drinking alcohol use in old age offers more significant challenges than for younger people. And actually, we're only spending 31 years in work between the age of 15 and 65, and that the number of years we've worked is fallen. So while we aren't actually that far off John Keynes's 15-hour working week if we divide it across our lives, we're spending too much of that time watching TV. and not enough time being creative. And I think that's where the opportunity is for innovation here, that we're not all aging as well as we can. We're not making the most of technology, and all those extra years we've been given, we're spending watching the TV, and innovators are not supporting the sort of the change in society we need to see.
And I guess you can broaden that even to other screens besides the TV. A lot of people are spending times tablets, phones, hours on end.
Increasingly, I've just seen some research from a university that's highlighted fairly significant challenges around actually older women's use of online gaming. So some of these and actually what we've been finding is that some of these are actually detrimental as opposed to being positive to health, and may relate to loneliness and isolation, why people are using them in the first place.
Wow. This is for you and Eric. What are the key changes that we'll be seeing in healthcare and the role technology will play in trying to tackle some of these staggering statistics that you've just given us?
So let me perhaps push back, then say where I think we need to go, and then talk about health, and then pass to Eric. I think healthcare is undoubtedly a really important driver, and there's huge potential. But for me, I think if we're going to transform the way we live long lives, we need to think about pushing innovation up what academics call the Maslow's hierarchy, which is, Maslow's triangle essentially argues that we've got this set of needs from health and shelter at the bottom up to self-actualization. And I think one of the problems with innovation in some of this space is we've focused so much on protecting us from harm, emergency alarm systems, on protecting sort of health, that actually we haven't focused on how to innovate to help people live better. And I think there's a need for more of a focus on how do we use innovation to create opportunities for fun, for example. But as you asked, let me give you two examples. One, I think we're going to see a very significant shift from care in hospitals to care at home. Technologies of digital connectivity will allow people to have health services delivered where they are. We've got a major problem in the UK that most of our for example, our stroke services tend to be located in cities, and most older people are increasingly living in urban and rural areas. We've got a major problem if you have a stroke, because you need to get there quickly. So how can we use technology to bring health to people? And we will definitely be doing that. And then secondly, and I know we've said this for decades, but it feels like it's happening, we are going to be moving from reactive to predictive healthcare. We'll see sophisticated AI tools, gene technologies. We'll be able to predict future risk of disease, facilitate early diagnosis, and better personalized and target treatments. And we're not far off in some of those. So there is some really exciting opportunities. But my note of caution is let's not focus all the innovation on health. Let's focus on making long lives fun as well.
Eric?
David and I were talking just before in preparation for today's discussion, and I think the key thing, he had just gotten back from China, and he was asked, what is it the UK is really good at? And I had to think about that, and I think, David, Johnny Ive is at Apple, was studied here at the Royal College of Art in London, and I think design is really important. And it's not just product design, but it's the service design. But I think more importantly, I think the technology can do anything. The question is, what do you want it to do? And I think it's this design-led thinking that is going to be really important to making technology relevant to people's lives, not just throwing it at them and making it available. I mean, AI and virtual wards is something that we're talking about, which is the equivalent to, I guess, the remote patient monitoring that you're seeing in the US. But how do you get that take up of the service? And I think it's the approach to it, and the design-led thinking approach is going to be really important. So I think that's what here in the UK, I think is going to go really well and could be applied very nicely in the US going forward.
I didn't know that about Johnny. I've attended that school, but I'm a big fan. And I also agree about the Maslow's hierarchy and putting fun and contribution. So rather than thinking of older adults as people who take in information, but think about their role in society, that's been really the narrative behind my work for over 35 years. Really going back to SeniorNet. So I like the things you're saying. I know that ARP with their H Tech Collaborative has been looking at fun as well and inspiring entrepreneurs to do that. Let's talk about the sponsors of the report. It forecasts that cash will become increasingly obsolete and that AI will democratize financial information and advice, changing how we save and manage money. So tell us more about that.
Well, I think we've seen a really striking change in a decade. Notes and coins are already pretty obsolete in lots of countries. Almost all payments in Denmark are digital or online. Even, as Eric said, I'm just back from China. Everyone, young and old, has a mobile phone and they use WePay and they use Alipay. Very few. In fact, if you pay in cash, the shops often don't have change because it's so unusual to have notes and coins. Before COVID, places like Germany and Europe stubbornly stuck with notes and coins, but even Germany, we've seen significant changes post-COVID. In some ways, I don't actually see that as a huge issue because, frankly, we will just adapt. And interesting, we did a really interesting bit of intelligence around aging, as we did a piece of work a couple of years ago on dementia and spending. And one of the things we went in thinking, well, there might be some big issues here with managing money. What we found is people with dementia loved card payments and they loved prepayment cards, and they love because you don't have to manage change. You don't have to get stressed at the counter. You don't have to. And actually, we found that family members and people with dementia found it was liberating being able to use not having to worry about notes and coins. So I think there's some, not only we will adapt, but we will thrive. But I think the more interesting bit is probably this. The way in which AI will democratize access to financial and information advice. So far we've had to pay for sometimes an expensive financial advisor to tell us what to do to prepare for long lives. I think increasingly we are going to be able to get AI to provide more personalized, more targeted money advice to support us all to prepare for long lives and keep us informed. So I think there's actually some really interesting opportunities, whether that be through platforms, through supporting platforms to support people who are going, where relatives may need to help to manage the money, platforms to default us into the right decision. So I think there's a lot of opportunities using technology and financial services, and in some ways, as Eric just pointed out, it's not innovation that's stopping us. It's things like regulation and barriers there, but actually we will be able to do a huge amount through managing data well in financial services that will help us all live better, longer lives.
You also point out in the report that there are a lot of work that needs to be done to be able to adapt to all these changes and longevity.
Yeah, look, over the next decade, as I said, I think we'll probably see more change in innovation than over the past 20, and a combination of AI, climate change and demography are going to drive that. And I don't think we're ready for that. Individuals, businesses and governments are going to have to adapt, and they'll need to do two things. They'll need to adapt to two things. One, our changing long lives, that we are changing and our desires are changing. And secondly, the way that technology interacts with these long lives. So to make the most of technology, we know it's got to be well designed and easy to use. People like the Helen Hamlin Centre that Eric mentioned in the UK have really pioneered inclusive design. Designers of products and services, the first thing you need to think about is making your products and services as inclusively designed as possible. For governments, they're going to need to regulate to protect consumers, but actually not over-regulate and stifle innovation. And this is going to be a really tough thing. So, for example, how do we share data in a way that supports innovation but protects privacy? It's going to be a huge challenge for the next decade. You don't want governments to stop some of these amazing innovators creating products, but at the same time, how do we make sure that that we have access to goods and services, and that we're not restricted? A really interesting example in Europe is I was talking to someone at a health conference who said that he thought that within a decade we wouldn't be able to buy travel insurance if we didn't share other details of our Garmin watch, if we didn't share our heart rate and our blood pressure monitor. And actually, I could see that happening. You know, the insurers will want to offer a cheap product for people who are very low risk, and if you're willing to share your the data that you're through your wearables, then you'll be able to have it. If you're not, then maybe you don't get it. And I think there are risks there. And then clearly for us as individuals, the third thing, we know we're going to have to adapt to the changes, and this is hard, and this will probably involve all of us changing our expectations of the products and services we receive. And hopefully for most of us, it will mean better products and services.
The report talks about investing in lifelong learning and training. This goes back, I guess, to some of the things you were talking about earlier, and focus on activities and fun, not just on the medical aspects here. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, if we're going to be living a 100-year life or even an 80-year life more commonly, we are going to need to adapt to the skills we have, and we're probably going to need to learn different skills. And I think our policymakers haven't done enough to think about what are the skills we are likely to need. You know, when I was growing up, you know, one of the first you go to school, and then one of the first things you sort of do between school and university is go and learn how to drive a car. It maybe that's one of the skills we won't need in the future, actually. But what are the skills we're going to need to be teaching people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s to make sure we live a long life? More of us will be learning throughout our long lives in the future, and there are some amazing new platforms to support that. Hopefully, I saw a really interesting one targeting gig economy drivers, so people who deliver food, and essentially what it was just an app that allowed people to do real bite-sized learning in the 2 or 3 minutes while they were waiting to pick up food. So really, really smart innovation targeting people who've got a very specific need and not much time. But at the same time, I think we are going to have to continue to learn. But actually, can we use some of this new technology to free up educators from paperwork and help them spend more time teaching rather than filling in forms? Can we use AI for smarter learning and smarter assessments and targeting homework for individuals? And I think we can, and we know we're going to have to learn more. We've got to use the technology to support that.
David, where can everyone go to get more information and access this report?
So the report's available on the International Longevity UK website, which is at www.ilcuk.org.uk, and it's called The Future of Aging in an Uncertain World.
David, congratulations on the work that you and your team are doing at the International Longevity Center. And thank you again for spending time with us. And Eric, thank you for finding David and this amazing report, and continue innovating there.
It's a pleasure, and it's wonderful, and I do hope the event goes really well, and I really hope some of your innovators can come up with some fantastic products to help us all live those longer lives better.
Mary, we started out with a little overview of the Longevity Innovation Summit at the National Press Club in Washington, coming up December 9th and 10th. The agenda really is amazing.
Yes, our focus is on caregiving. I'm very excited. We'll be hearing from people like Michael Phillips, Technology and Strategy Integration at ARP, Nancy Lamond, the Chief Advocacy and Engagement Officer at ARP. We'll have a keynote panel, and we'll hear from the leaders of Care Daily, Ziegler, Care Yaya, Scan Foundation, and that's just the start. There are the government regulators, leaders from the state of Florida, the state of New York, Massachusetts, the national government, and a lot of investors, and of course, entrepreneurs, all coming together around this topic of innovation.
You have the always exciting pitch for distribution to the corporations and organizations investing in the longevity economy, always fun and interesting. And the fireside chats and panel discussions are just great. So we encourage everyone to take a look at the full agenda and register at the WashingtonInnovationSummit.com. Make sure you head to the website. You can register there and get the full agenda.
Fred, we have our holiday party planned, which we do with Avocado, and the networking's great there. The music's great there. The singer is the same age as I am, Sandra Johnson, same birthday. She's 76 years old. So it's going to be wonderful to be back at the National Press Club I love having it there because that's where you are supposed to launch things. So I hope to see many of our great friends and meet some new friends as well.
And I want to emphasize what you see going on, the collaboration, the discussions, they're every bit as meaningful, sometimes more meaningful than what's going on up on stage. It really is a terrific event. And the site again is WashingtonInnovationSummit.com. We want to thank David Sinclair and Eric Kilstrom once again for spending time with us. And of course, we appreciate all of you for watching or listening. You can always find more at maryfurlong.com/podcast.